Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Hey, kia ora. Helen Brom's here to coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1556. Cross that one off. Who has the rights? Okay, so if you've been following along this week, the last 3 nights, we've been talking about James Bond. And because it's November and I do a James Bond movie fest in November, starting on November the 1st with Dr. No. November the 2nd is From Russia with Love. Last night, being the 3rd, was Goldfinger. And today is Thunderball. But there's a bit of controversy around this movie. Thunderball was actually intended to be the first James Bond movie. It was written by 3 gentlemen. It was collaborated with Ian Fleming, Kevin McClory, and Jack Whittingham. And they actually it was actually written as a screenplay to start with. So it was originally meant to be the first James Bond movie. But then Ian Fleming then went ahead and published it as a novel. And the other 2 went into court with him and said they claimed that it was based on the screenplay the trio had written earlier and failed in the translation to the James Bond movies. And it was actually, this legal dispute actually ran from 1961, which is before the first James Bond movie came out in 1962, until 2006. So it's taken a long time to get this movie done. And there's been controversy about it. So first of all, they couldn't film it because Kevin McClory was suing for the rights of the book because he helped co-write the play. And it was settled out of court. McClory retained certain rights. Sorry, I'm having to read this because I keep getting them muddled in my head. McClory retained certain screen rights to the novel's story, plot, and characters. By then, the Bond was box office success, and series producers Broccoli and Saltzman feared a rival McClory film beyond their control. But they came to an agreement, and Thunderball was filmed as number 4. But then later on, it was they wanted to. Kevin McClory wanted to remake Thunderball, and so he did do the remake, which was called Never Say Never Again, which came out in 1980. I want to say 83, maybe it was 85. Octopussy, what year? 83, because it came out the same year as Octopussy. But then there was controversy about him filming that film. And what the problem was is that they had battles that followed with him trying to film that film because he was trying to change the storyline. And they had this whole other script written up for the remake of it. But of course, Eon Productions came in and says, you can't do that because it had to stick to the original story. You can't go making all these changes and everything else. And so Never Say Never Again was filmed with Sean Connery. He got him to come back. And I'll tell you the story about the naming of the movie when we get to that movie on the 26th or somewhere around then. Oh, sorry, I just she came back. But because he was trying to change the storyline so much that they said, no, you can't do that. You have to stick to the original script, to the original storyline. So they remade. So that's why Never Say Never Again and Thunderball are the same storyline, basically. And so my question to you is, have you seen either one of those movies? Have you seen both of those movies? Which one do you think is better? It's got Sean Connery both as James Bond, but there were certain characters that they couldn't bring across. Like, for example, when the movie starts, it doesn't have the James Bond theme at the beginning. It doesn't have looking through the barrel of the gun at the beginning of the movie. It just fills up the screen with 007. So there's certain traits that were in or certain things that are in the franchise of James Bond by Eon Productions, which they could not use in Never Say Never Again. They don't have Q. Or they have a Q, but it's not Desmond Llewellyn. And he's a character. I absolutely loved him. Yeah, he was in 17. Yeah, we'll talk about him when World Is Not Enough comes around, because there's a very interesting story that goes with that one. So when you're watching Thunderball tonight, know that that was actually supposed to be the first James Bond film. but it ends up being number 4 that was created and released, and it had that little legal battles going on between it, and there were different battles over the years as Kevin McClory tried to remake the movie and the way he wanted to make it, and they wouldn't allow him to do it because of what was in the agreement. And so he finally remade it as Never Say Never, which came out in 1983, a few months after Octopussy. And I think Octopussy was released in like June, and Never Say Never Again was like October of 1983. So that's, 2 James Bond movies in a year. I can deal with that. So yeah, so there's some of the people. So he couldn't use any of the people that were tied to Eon Productions for James Bond. So they had to come up with a whole new cast and everything else. But by that stage, Sean Connery wasn't part of the Eon Productions, and he got persuaded to come back as James Bond. And we'll talk more about that when we get to Never Say Never Again, which will, like I said, be later on this month around the 26th, because I consider that movie number 26. Even though it came out at the same time as Octopussy, and Octopussy was number 13. Hang on, one moment. Yeah, Octopussy was number 13, because number 12 is For Your Eyes Only. That's right. So, yes, there's a story with that one too. Yeah, of course, I had some stories for all of the different ones. So that is what, who has the rights on Thunderball, and what they made it that way. And there were stories flying around that that Sean Connery wasn't happy how Thunderball was made, and he wanted to do a remake of it, and so that's what Never Say Never is again. And there was the rumors. There's all sorts of different stories floating around about why Thunderball was remade as Never Say Never Again. And basically, it comes down to Kevin McClory wanted to film it how he wanted to film it, and he had the rights to it, but he had to stay within the storylines of the story that he already had, the plot that he already had, and so that's why they are so similar. Just little minor tweaks here and there. So if you've seen both movies, which one do you prefer? I mean, they both got Sean Connery as James Bond, so as far as I'm concerned, that's a done deal. That's done. Sean Connery is in both of them. Doesn't really matter. So what I want to, and one thing I do have to correct myself on, and I discovered this last night when I went to watch Goldfinger, is that not all the James Bond movies are free with Amazon Prime. There are some that are under MGM Plus, which is an Amazon channel, which has a subscription to it, just so you know. So I apologize for that misdirection on that one. I discovered that last night when I went to watch Goldfinger. It says, you have to have MGM Plus. Well, what the heck's MGM Plus? And of course, MGM is owned by Amazon, and they have a premium channel that you pay for that has a lot of the old MGM movies on it. And so I was looking through the catalog last night thinking, okay, well, I could watch all my James Bond movies, and that way, because I can't find my Blu-ray player, because the only discs that I can find so far are the Blu-ray ones. So I can't watch them on Blu-ray because I can't find my Blu-ray player, which means I'd have to go buy a new Blu-ray player, which I don't want to do right now. So let's get the 7 days free, pay the $5 or $6 a month that it is. And rather than paying $4 a movie to watch, I get my money's worth out of it. Have it for a month and cancel it. So that's what I'm doing. I figured that would be the cheaper way of going rather than either renting movies or, and with time on my hand, time right now, I don't have the time to go looking in that room for the DVD, for the Blu-ray player. I do have one in the RV. The only problem is I've got it so well Velcroed to the shelf, I can't pull it off. I went to remove it. I thought I'll just take this one to the house until I find the other one. Yeah, I went to pull it up, and it's got industrial strength Velcro on the bottom of the Blu-ray player in the RV, and that's stuck down pretty well. So I couldn't even go and borrow that one. I wouldn't even figure out how to even start trying to remove that. So I figured we'll just leave it there. So anyway, that's the story behind Thunderball. So that's what we're going to be watching this evening. We're going to go make some dinner and sit down and watch Thunderball. And the cool part about starting this early in the evening, we'll be starting around 6:30. The cool part about this early in the movie is that they're like 2-hour movies. So by 8:30, they're done. If I want to watch another movie, I can, or I can just go do something else. But the night is still young at that point, and it's still about at least an hour and a half before I go to bed anyway. So I could watch a short movie. I could watch an episode of some program, or I could just sit, put my audiobook on and play games on the iPad. But I get enough time to decide what I want to do with that. So that's pretty cool too. And as a reminder, tonight, for those here in the United States, it is the November the 4th. Your clocks fall back 1 hour this evening. Here in Arizona, I don't need to worry about that. All I know is that my meeting that used to be at 8 a.m. is now at 9 a.m. Yeah, I used to, for 8 months of the year, I work on Pacific time, because for 8 months of the year, Pacific time catches up with Arizona time, because Arizona does not do daylight savings. So I'm working on Pacific time for 8 months of the year. For 4 months of the year, I'm working on Mountain time, and with the rest of Mountain time. And so my AM start at 9 a.m. My work that starts at 12 noon now starts at 1 p.m. and all that sort of stuff. So it does affect us in a way. But I kind of like the 8 a.m. meetings being at 9 a.m. I like that a little better, and I just get used to it, and bam, I'm back on Pacific time again. But anyway, so tonight it is Thunderball. It is a really cool, it is a cool movie. They are cool movies. And this, is it this version? I think it might be this version that they have it's the way it is filmed cracks me up. There's a scene in there where the boat gets out of control, and it just sort of like they speed it up, even though the fight scene inside the scene you're seeing through the windows as the boat speeds up is hilarious while there's a fight scene going on in the wheelhouse. Now it's either on this one or it's on Never Say Never Again. I can't remember which one. I actually think it might be on Never Say Never Again. But it just absolutely cracks me up every time I see it, because the outside's going by so fast. They've got the screen, somebody's scrolling the screen through the window very, very quickly. But like I said, this is the only film franchise that I know of that has been around for 60 years, has released 25 movies, and you can watch the trends going through the different movies, the fashion, the fads, the gadgets that they have, the technology, the cinematography, the stunts that get done. Because they used to do stunts very different back then, and now they've got capabilities to do completely different stunts because of the way the safety gear and everything else has changed over time and all of that. So everything revolving around James Bond character, you can actually follow through time, through the different fashions, through the technology. The cinematography on how they film it is different, and it's like I said, it's the only movie franchise I can think of that's been around for 60 years, has put out 25 movies in that 60 years, and you can follow trends through those movies, even the political stories, everything. And I don't know of any movie franchise that has done that. If you know of another movie franchise that's done that, I would love to learn about that. But as far as I know, James Bond is the only one that I can think of that has done that much over a 60-year period. So keep that in mind when you're watching the movies, that there are some things in there that you might find a little sort of like, I don't know about that. Remember the time it was filmed, please. Remember the time it was filmed. And which is what you've got if you are watching, what was the other one I watched the other day? Casino Royale, that was filmed in 1967 as a James Bond spoof movie. Please keep that in mind when you are watching it, because it is not politically correct at all. If you fast forward then to Blazing Saddles, and then to like Blazing Saddles, Airplane, all the Hot Shots and Top Secret, they are all spoof movies, and they were correct for the times in which they were filmed. Let me put it that way. They were correct for the times in which they were filmed. So please keep that in mind when you are watching them. Don't take offense to them. I know some people out there will get oversensitive, but remember the time it was filmed and what was going on in the political situation, in the world situation at the time it was filmed. I think people tend to forget that at times, and they take offense to some movies. But it's sort of like, you have to remember when this was filmed, what was going on in the world, what was in the headlines during that time. You got to put it into context instead of trying to put today's views on a movie that was done, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. You can't put today's values on a movie that was done 50 years ago. You have to look at it in the context of, this is when it was filmed, this is what was going on, this is why this is this way. And yeah, because it ain't going to change. So anyway, that's it. I'm out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening. If you're watching Thunderball tonight, would love to hear your views on that. If you're watching any other James Bond movies, please let us know in the comments below which one you watched this evening, and what your thoughts were of it. I love all the James Bond movies. I really don't have one that I think, oh, that one's coming up, I really don't want to watch it. And I don't have that with any of them. A lot of people don't like Moonraker, yet I find it kind of cool. I like that movie. And somebody said, is there a James Bond movie you don't like? And I looked at them and went, no. It's James Bond. That's all. Oh, I do remember one thing I was going to tell you. So remember I was talking the other night about how there's beginning of one of the movies where James Bond comes out of the water. He's in a dry suit. He runs into this big oil tanker, which is this beautiful, looks like a beautiful luxury house on the inside. And they've got these big cans of nitroglycerine, and he blows them up in the tank, and he sets the timer for when he's going to be in the bar that's close by. And then he goes outside and he takes off the dry suit, puts his red carnation, he's got a white dinner jacket on, puts his red carnation into the lapel there, and he's immaculately dressed in a white in a white jacket tuxedo, and he goes off to the bar. And when you see him, when you first come in, and that's in the beginning of Goldfinger. So when you first come in, you see this duck floating along the water, and then the head pops up underneath the duck. Here's the duck on top of his head. And you see him toss the duck piece away, and then he gets out of the water, and he takes off some of his gear and goes in and sets this thing up ready to blow. And then he's in the bar later on. And but the interesting thing, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm not going to spoil this piece for you, but it is rather shocking, the beginning of this movie. And when you watch the beginning of Goldfinger, and I tell you it's rather shocking, you'll discover why. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with that. So go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening. I'm off to watch figure out some dinner, and maybe I'll just do a protein shake, and then we're sitting down and watching Thunderball. So go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hey, konara.